Climate Committee. We're here in room 1150. It is Monday, March 10th, 2025 at 12:35 p.m. and a quorum is present. Members, glad to report we will be hearing and then laying over Senate File 1142, which is Senator Rarick. Folks, we have an extremely long list of testifiers. The testimony would be limited to about 2 minutes per testifier. And then members, what let's do is let's follow our standard procedure, have the bill presented, allow testifiers to come forward, and then go to member questions. I think that'll be more efficient. Anyone got a problem with that approach? All right. With that, Senator Rarick, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Senate File 1142 is a bill that many of us who have served in this committee have heard the discussions around. There's been different iterations of how to go about doing this, so I was just going to start really quickly with the bill itself. Just a couple of minor changes at the beginning as far as how we define capacity, and then a qualifying facility. But the gist of the bill is looking at how we get at compensating folks who have installed their own solar systems and how we compensate them for the extra generation that they are having above and beyond what they use personally. And so how did we get here to be looking at this? I think originally what most of us would believe is that the individual solar market started as a way to allow people to generate the electricity that they would use so that they could decrease or eliminate their own electric utility bill. And we have a lot of different programs out there to help folks install the system, buy the equipment, and get set up. What has happened and how this has evolved over the years is that because of the way folks are compensated for overgeneration, we are starting to see folks who are building are starting to purposely overbuild their needs and use this as a form of their own income. But what we have to understand when they're saying that they want to realize this income from their generation is in our electric co-ops and municipals, who is paying for that? And it is all the other customers who are on that system. So what we look at in the bill here, instead of paying the retail rate for this overgeneration like what is currently happening, we are looking to pay at avoided cost. So then the next question becomes, what is avoided cost? And this is part of where I believe some of the miscommunication has been happening around this piece of legislation. So avoided cost is looking to get at what a utility would save by buying a different form of energy that was being produced and that is available. Now, when a lot of people are talking about this around this bill, they're saying that the reimbursement rate would be around 2 cents per kilowatt. But that is if you were under an IOU. That is the avoided cost rate for an IOU. It is not the same for a co-op or a municipal. And so we have to understand that and there are folks out there who want a specific number listed in the legislation. That is problematic from the standpoint that municipals and co-ops all have different contracts for purchasing their energy. They all have different usage amounts. So they all are paying a widely varied amount for the energy that they bring in. So thus the avoided cost is going to be different. And then for each utility, they should be paying a different cost to the folks who are overproducing through their own systems. So that is what we are getting at with the avoided cost and why it was defined the way it is in this bill and why we haven't picked a specific number that would be across the board for all of the utilities. Another thing that, as we hear testimony, what this bill does not do. This bill does not take away the right of an individual to build a solar system on their property and generate the amount of electricity that they use and impact what they would be reimbursed. So if they produce over the course of a year the exact same amount that they use, their cost would still be zero. So think about what that means. It means the utility is serving as their storage system. When they produce, they put their generation out onto the system, and when they need to use, they take off of the system. So they are not having to invest in battery storage or some type of other storage system. So that is a definite benefit for them. One other thing that we will hear a lot about, part of the cost of this, and that is connection fees that go along with these systems. I believe this bill, if passed, will actually cap, if not start lowering, what the connection fees are for folks who have solar systems on their property. Why do I say that? These co-ops and municipals they've been starting to see this disparity, and they're realizing when they have to buy that energy at retail rate from people who are overproducing, that is going to impact their cost and end up raising the general rates. So they've started figuring, can we put a connection fee on that will help offset that? Well, if we continue to overbuild, we're going to continue to see costs rise from the utilities end, so connection fees will continue to rise to match that. If we pass this so that these reimbursement rates for the overproduction are at a rate that's going to be very similar to what they can buy that energy from other producers, that will eliminate their need to charge these connection fees to offset their costs, because they will not have those increased costs on the system. One last point. And one other, not necessarily dealing with the bill, but another question that may arise that I think folks should understand. In the existing language of the bill, these systems are capped at 40 kW. And the question has been asked, why? Was that just an arbitrary number? And in the research that I've done and talking with the utility folks, there is actually an explanation as to why 40 kW is the cap. And that is any individual home, when the utility sizes the transformer, sizes the lines that are coming in to service that property, that is the maximum amount that is typically installed. So if you are going to install a larger than 40 kW system on your premises, the wiring from the utility that has come in to your meter will not be able to handle anything in excess of that. So even if you are producing over that, that amount would not be able to be carried out to the system anyway. So, Mr. Chair, I know we have a long list of testifiers, so I will end my opening remarks there, allow us to get to the testifiers, and then appreciate this, and we'll answer any questions that arise at that point.
Thank you, Senator Rarick. Well presented. Just want to note for the record, the authors on the bill are Senator Rarick as the chief author, Senator John Hoffman, Senator Rob Kupek, Senator Eric Pratt, and Senator Andrew Matthews. So the bill comes to us with those authors. We're going to go through the testifier list, folks. That's published in your agenda. If you're not able to jump up and testify in the order, just let our staff know here and we can juggle the order a little bit. We are asking for testimony to be limited to 2 minutes in order to accommodate more than 24 testifiers and still do the committee's business. Again, members, let's do the testifiers, then come back for member questions. With that, our first testifier is Tim Sullivan, with Dan Carlisle after that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee, for allowing me to testify on 1142. I'm Tim Sullivan. I'm president and CEO of Wright Hennepin Cooperative Electric Association. We serve western Hennepin County and all of Wright County for about 50,000 members. And as I think all of you know, electric cooperatives are not-for-profit. We're built for and run for those we serve. And collectively, electric cooperatives serve about 85% of the state's landmass, a third of Minnesota consumers, 1.7 million people in all. And on behalf of those members, I ask you to support SF 1142. This bill will return at least some fairness to a net metering system that now allows a few to profit at the expense of the many. The current net metering law requires electric cooperatives to pay retail prices for those who produce solar electricity for their own needs, in excess of their own needs. Simply put, paying retail prices costs about twice as much as wholesale costs. And effectively, it means those who don't have solar arrays subsidize those who do. And at Wright-Hennepin in 2024, this cost us about $250,000 a year, which means a direct transfer from 49,000 plus Wright-Hennepin members to just 270 who produce and sell excess solar energy. And statewide, that number climbs to millions of dollars a year. So consider for a second just what that means. You might have an elderly fixed income retiree who is paying a portion of her electric bill every month to subsidize a well-to-do neighbor who sells solar energy in excess of their need. And an average new solar system is not cheap. In 2024, it cost $47,000 on average in Wright-Hennepin's service territory. That's more than a new car. And an individual member profited $7,500 last year from this policy. Put another way, that means 4 Wright-Hennepin members paid their entire annual electric bill to subsidize and pay the profit of just 1. Now, that's a Robin Hood
Mr.
in
Sullivan,
reverse policy.
Sorry for interrupting. We're at about 2.5 minutes. So again, if each of the testifiers could shape their testimony to 2, and please continue if you could.
Thank you,
wrap it
Mr.
up,
Chair.
please.
I'll wrap up in just a couple of sentences. We ask you to approve this very modest and reasonable reform. Minnesota, as you know, is the only state left in the union that allows individuals to install oversized system. And for all of those reasons, we urge your support for SF 1142. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan, and thank you for wrapping it up. Mr. Carlisle, and on deck, we would have Bill Black. Mr. Carlisle, please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for allowing me to testify in favor of SF 1142 today. I'm the CEO, General Manager at Todd Wadena Electric Cooperative, a system of about 9,000 meters up in north central Minnesota. I have the distinct honor, I guess, of serving some hardworking, dedicated individuals that also happen to be incredibly impoverished. I think statistically, Todd and Wadena counties are a couple of the most impoverished states in all of Minnesota. The perspective that I bring today and the view from which I look at this Senate file is that last year we had an incredible budget tightening cycle at the co-op. We view ourselves as fiduciaries to do everything we can to keep electric rates reasonable and as low as possible for our members. Literally including eliminating one of the carpet shampooing to save $400 in our lobby and in our hallways. So when I have the discussion with members and I have to try to explain why I bought electrons for $70,000 from 47 systems that produced excess energy on the Todd Wadena system, when I could have purchased those electrons for around $30,000, it's a difficult conversation for me. We're the only state in the union that requires co-ops to pay full retail for excess production. I think it's time that we remedy it. I urge you to please support Senator Rarick's efforts in Senate File 1142. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Very well done. Next, we'll have Bill Black, and after that, Jim Falk. Mr. Black, nice to see you again. Welcome back to the committee. If you could start, please, by introducing yourself and presenting your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Bill Black, representing the Minnesota Municipal Utilities Association. Minnesota has 120 municipal electric utilities with a median size of 1,350 customer meters. The problem that Senate File 1142 seeks to solve is this. Average income people and those who can't afford their own utility bills are forced to pay for energy produced by their neighbors when those neighbors generate far more energy than they can use, while they're doing so precisely to profit from their non-generating neighbors. Now, most solar owners do not do this, and this bill will not hurt them in the least. In fact, if their systems are just big enough to have some but not too many generating credits left at the end of the year, they'll be better off under the changes in this bill. This bill surgically removes a growing problem without penalizing those who generate their own electricity, even if they sell a reasonable amount of excess to their utility, as the law provides for. The group that suggested these changes to Senator Rarick put a great deal of thought into making them fair and focused and in keeping with the spirit of the law. We considered several different approaches and other tools available for dealing with the problem and believe this legislation offers the clearest, fairest, least painful way to deal with it. To be honest, most municipal utilities are not poised to meet their 2040 renewable and carbon-free standards. Or, to put it very mildly, making every effort to meet them will put serious upward pressure on their customers' energy bills. But you have control over the undue rate pressure caused by the problem this bill fixes. It's one of the very few cost obstacles you can clear from our way toward meeting our renewable and carbon-free goals. Before the 100% standard, municipal utilities were already turning every stone to find cost savings in order to keep their cost-based rates in line with the state's other utilities, while their size and structure prevents them from benefiting as much from economies of scale. Meanwhile, the number of oversized net metered facilities on municipal systems is growing. For co-ops, the numbers are huge, but average numbers don't really tell the story. On some systems, it isn't a financial problem yet, but on at least one typical size municipal utility, payouts are becoming excessive in proportion to the community's customers who are footing the bill. And the problem will certainly grow under the current law. To be clear, generating customers are not violating the letter of the law. 40 kilowatts is the arbitrary cap, but the statute also says that net metered facility means an electric generating facility constructed for the purpose of offsetting energy use, and that the law should be interpreted consistent with protection of the ratepayers and the public. The bill keeps the 40 kW cap and only reduces compensation to the same wholesale energy rate paid for bigger net metered systems for annual excess credits, not for monthly credits as California does. California also caps the customer at their usage level, and that's for its investor-owned utilities. It allows municipals to make their own net metering policies. Mr. Chair, members, I know how this bill would affect solar developers. It's no mystery, and it's not surprising from a business perspective why they would oppose it. They would be asked less often by their customers for systems that are larger than they need. What I don't see are any customer advocates opposing the bill. Municipals and co-ops are customer-owned. Their utilities are their advocates. I hope you will see that a vote for this bill is a vote in support of them and not a vote against solar.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Next, we have Mr. Falk. After that, Mr. Sam Smith. Mr. Falk, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and present a couple minutes of testimony.
Jim Falk, I'm here to testify for Minnesota Farmers Union. Chair Prince and members of the committee, I'm here to testify against Senate File 1142. I have both wind and solar net metering systems on my fourth generation farm, and I produce approximately 70% of my energy needs annually from those renewable energy systems. There's no disputing that producing energy on site where it's used is the most efficient energy system. Senate File 1142 changes the payment structure from a retail payment on energy going back into the grid to an avoided cost payment, which is the lowest cost wholesale payment calculated. This is not realistic, and the result will be that few net metering renewable energy systems will be built if this bill were to become law. A few years back, the utilities convinced the PUC to be able to charge their customers for having a net metering renewable energy system. Odd, isn't it, that you get a rebate for updating to LED lighting or updating to an energy-efficient appliance that reduces the energy you consume, but you're charged for having the most efficient energy system right on site, a net metering system. So the argument that they're losing money just isn't true. When I send my energy back into the local grid, when the REA is purchasing peak power, it is often, as is often the case with our extreme weather, my power paid at the retail rate is substantially lower than the cost for the REA that the power the REA buys at the peak rate. If the REAs want to change the rate paid, avoided cost is not the place to start the conversation, and the fee structure should be removed. In addition, there's no mention in this bill of existing systems being grandfathered in. It's obvious that the folks pushing this bill had no interest in engaging other stakeholders in the conversation, and I feel that's a big problem. The right thing to do is to vote this bill down and send a message that all stakeholders need to be at the table for updates to any changes in our net metering law that has been working since 1983. A lot of focus seems to be on solar, but this net metering law also affects small wind. So it has that as well, and I have both systems. Thank you for allowing me to testify today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Falcon. Just a note, doors are open to stakeholders who want to advocate on these policies. If you come across a member of the Minnesota Senate who says they will not meet with the stakeholder, I encourage you to contact my office. With that, we're going to go next to Sam Smith and with Patty O'Keefe following that. Mr. Smith, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Chair, friends, committee members, Senator Rarick, my name is Sam Smith, and I'm here to testify on Senate File 1142 on behalf of the Department of Commerce. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. We do not disagree with the basic premise driving this bill. And as Commerce testified in the House, we have been working with our partners at the rural electric co-ops to find the best way to move forward. Co-op members or customers who install solar that exceeds their load can impose additional costs on other members and customers. This bill as written, though, would fundamentally change net metering for people who already have made investments in solar systems and for any future solar adoption. We have a 2040 law that will require broad adoption of renewables of all types and sizes, as well as additional clean, firm resources, including storage. When it comes to solar, we need a yes and approach that includes all of the scales of solar. Distributed energy systems can be an important part of meeting our clean electricity needs. With that context in mind, we come not in opposition to this concept, but we have some concerns about this approach and the impact it may have on helping us collectively meet these needs. Net metering is complicated. We should be intentional about how we approach this bill and the broader conversation. We are very concerned this bill does not grandfather in existing systems. We have previously recommended that a grandfathering clause allow any projects that have already been submitted their interconnection applications to proceed under existing rules should this bill or a similar bill pass. We think these are essential changes to include. In addition, we have concerns about the change in definition of capacity, as it could be construed to disincentivize storage. The Minnesota Public Utilities Commission has authorized a new rulemaking proceeding regarding definition of capacity. That process should be allowed to proceed to work through the technical implications of this definition. The broader concept we think warrants further discussion is around lifting the cap on net meter systems from 40 kilowatts to 1 megawatt. As we ask the electric system to do more and more, we don't want people to lock in undersized systems to meet the growing demand of either their individual household or their small local business. We are wrestling with this basic fact at all scales. We've had years of stagnating or even declining demand in the electric sector. As we contemplate everything from individuals and their new electric vehicles to hyperscaler data centers, we need to make sure we are incentivizing adequate buildup of clean resources to match those potential future sources of load growth. As my Division of Energy Resources colleagues conveyed in the House, put simply, we are just going to need more of these resources across our grid. So long as the systems installed are compensated in keeping with the definition of a net metered facility, which states, an electric generation facility constructed for the purpose of offsetting energy use, and any excess generation is compensated at a fair market value. Larger systems offsetting load could provide a pathway to advance more distributed and cost-effective solar throughout Minnesota. We understand the drive to introduce this bill, and we think more discussion is necessary to get to a solution that addresses those real concerns, while also addressing our other imperatives to accelerate the deployment of clean energy resources at all scales. We look forward to continuing the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And before you run off, just want to make sure I heard you correctly. Commerce does not disagree with the basic premise of the bill. Commerce has concerns about the lack of a grandfather clause, which, as I understand, was added in the other body. The definition and the question of capacity between 40K. I appreciate the testimony. Look forward to partnering with Commerce as we go forward. Thank you again, Mr. Smith. Next is Patty O'Keefe, and following that would be Amy Hubbard.
Okay.
Ms. O'Keefe.
Hello, Chair, friends, committee members, and Senator Rarick. My name is Patty O'Keefe. I'm the Midwest Regional Director with Vote Solar, an organization advocating for equitable solar policy. Thanks for the opportunity to testify today on Senate File 1142. No matter how it's framed, the bill before you today is no small deal. It would have a chilling effect on solar and co-op territories, resulting in less solar overall, fewer bill savings, and the removal of a crucial tool for rural wealth building. For farmers specifically, with commodities being so expensive, this is one of few tools that farmers have to control their input costs. Based on that, my main question is, why should rural communities and businesses in Minnesota get a worse deal when it comes to solar? Rural communities should have just as much freedom to choose solar and benefit from it as people do in metro areas. This bill is being introduced at a time when we need to dramatically increase the amount of rooftop solar in Minnesota. Everyone on this committee knows we're facing a near-term future of steep load growth while also needing to meet our carbon-free goals. Rooftop solar reduces strain on the grid. It allows property owners, businesses, farmers, schools, churches, nonprofits, and more to benefit from their own energy generation. And it means less reliance on large-scale solar projects that take up farmland. Considering policies that make it harder for rooftop solar to flourish is a missed opportunity for economic growth and resiliency of our grid. The justification for this policy is the claim that net metering unfairly impacts non-solar customers. However, there already are a slew of fixed charges, such as grid access fees, that solar customers must pay to support grid maintenance and reliability. Are all utilities using those grid access fees? What is the actual economic impact of net metering to non-solar customers? To what extent are the grid access fees doing what they're supposed to do and offsetting those costs? And what are the benefits that this rooftop solar is bringing to the grid, and how much money is that saving customers? I ask these questions because if you're proposing to change a program that has worked well for 40 years, there needs to be clear evidence of a problem to justify it. And despite numerous requests to see that data, I feel like that data has not been sufficiently provided yet to demonstrate the justification for a bill as big as this. If the data is provided and it is made clear that adjustments are needed, they should be precise, not a sweeping rollback of net metering, so as to make sure our still maturing solar market and the thousands of people that it employs are protected. I urge you to consider these points, these workers, your constituents, and future generations, and ask you to not approve SF 1142. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. O'Keefe. And as to the question of evidence, testimony, and data, I think it's a good one. We did have testimony from Wright Hennepin Electric and Todd Wadena providing specific numbers, testifying to the Senate Energy Committee today. I do consider that a type of data. Looking forward to further discussions. With that, we'll go to Amy Hubbard. With the next testifier would be Eric Jensen. Ms. Hubbard, welcome to the committee. Please identify yourself and present your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Friends and committee members. My name is Amy Hubbard. I'm a volunteer for the Sierra Club. I live in Minneapolis and Cook County. Arrowhead Electric is my cooperative. I have rooftop solar. I love Arrowhead Electric. They were very helpful with my solar installations, and they even have a community solar project that is available to both renters and homeowners. I'm opposed to the changes that are proposed in net metering bill. Solar installations are a benefit to our community. It isn't just individuals like myself that own solar. It is small businesses like Cliff Dweller in Tofty, the Lutheran Church in Grand Marais, and nonprofits like the North House Folk School. Having locally generated solar makes our community more resilient. Small solar is the only energy that is locally produced, and for many people, electricity is the primary source of power for both heat and light. More small installations should be encouraged, not discouraged. This bill is a job killer. A similar law in California costs 17,000 jobs. It is a fairness issue. Investments were made based on current rules. It is unfair to change that contract. Finally, rural sociologists tell us that most of the things we believe about rural communities are just not borne out in the facts. I believe that the small solar installations are a net positive for our community. The authors of this bill perhaps are not sure and that think that I have an unfair advantage. I would ask that you put aside this bill and instead make a further study of the issue. If a change is needed, base it not on my preconceptions or yours, but on facts. Make changes that promote a more resilient communities, retain and expand jobs, and projects that protect the beauty of our environment, which is why people want to live and work in Cook County and Minnesota as a whole. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much for that testimony, Ms. Hubbard. Right exactly on 2 minutes, too, so we have a gold star we will send into the audience. With that, we have now Mr. Eric Jensen, and then Alex Gast would be the following testifier. Mr. Jensen, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Thank you. My name is Eric Jensen. I'm Partnership Director for Apadana Energy. I also run my own impact development firm called Solar by Us. Thank you, Chair, Committee, Senator. I appreciate the chance to speak. I come in a previous life from the energy program at the Isaac Walton League, a rural and suburban conservation nonprofit. We worked on this issue about a dozen years ago, and at that time we made some adjustments. We recognized that the original intent of net metering was to create self-sufficiency, capture Minnesota resources, and grow our economy. It wasn't actually based on solar at the time. It was focused more on wind, but it's adapted, it's changed. We made some changes in that time, a little over a decade ago. It was never meant to be an incentive. It is not currently an incentive as far as we know. This is a self-sufficiency and accessibility of freedom tool for Minnesotans. We have done a lot of work since then to come up with things like value of solar or other calculations that would analyze and understand what these resources provide the state. It is definitely not avoided cost. That would be incorrectly charging customers or at least not reimbursing them for the value they bring to the grid. We have seen that municipals and cooperative utilities have tools available to them that they're not utilizing, or they're utilizing in ways that are punitive against resources like this, such as fees that aren't properly cost-based. They could also be utilizing programs such as incentives that are targeting these systems, incenting their customers to align them with their grid better if they feel there is sort of this disproportionate amount in accounting. But honestly, this bill today is not ready to move forward. It needs additional work like we did previously with working groups, with intent, with proper analysis. I will say, I will put on my hat as a developer working with low-income housing, low-income individuals, nonprofits supporting those folks. I have multiple projects that this bill will halt. I have been successful working with such organizations such as low-income manufactured cooperatives, one of the few affordable housing spaces anymore. I have a project that would proceed under net metering as it stands. It will not if we make these changes, because this does not take into account some nuance, such as a manufactured home cannot have solar placed on it. It's not built for that, but a community building that could utilize more space can. So I'll end it there.
If we could wrap up, please.
Yes, and just say that there are multiple projects like that out there that we would like to proceed with that we'll have to stop losing, and the loss would be, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Mr. Gass. I'm sorry, that was Mr. Jensen, right? Mr. Jensen, sorry about that. Now we have Mr. Gast, is that correct? Yep. Mr. Gast, if you could introduce yourself and please present your testimony. Our next testifier would be Kim Benjamin. Mr. Gast.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Alex Gast. I am the COO and co-owner of Cedar Creek Energy. We are a developer based out of Blaine, Minnesota. We operate throughout Minnesota, the upper Midwest, and we're expanding rapidly. I'm here to express my opposition of the bill as it sits today. Specifically, I would like to touch base on the redefinition of capacity. I believe that changing this definition is going to have long-lasting and significant effects for the state of Minnesota, for the utilities, and for the customers they serve, specifically co-op and municipal members. This change would not coincide with MISO and how they define capacity within their market and the grid that they operate. In addition, it would limit members of these cooperatives to products, inverter-based products, that simply just don't exist in the marketplace today. If you are a small welding shop, let's say, and you run 480-volt welders, and you want to install a solar system to offset your generation, the choices that you have for inverters today are 50 or 60 kW. If you change the definition of this to possible capacity versus point of connection and limiting output, these folks won't have a means to supply energy for themselves. I mean, it's just that simple. It has significant effects from an engineering standpoint as it relates to real power, active power, deration. The inverters themselves are more than capable of being derated by the factory, by factory technician, by installers, so customers cannot change them. From a long-term standpoint, it's going to limit the ability of these co-ops to use that extra headroom and deploy energy storage in the future, or use these inverters with their advanced grid settings to balance grid issues. I'd be open to questions, happy to answer them. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gass. And for all the testifiers, again, it's our intention to have the testimony conclude and then questions from members, which could include questions of any particular testifier. With that, our testifier is Kim Benjamin. Next up would be Michael Allen. Ms. Benjamin, please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Kim Benjamin. I am the owner of Minnesota Solar and More. We install rooftop residential solar in the Twin Cities and West Central Minnesota. I'm here today opposing this bill, strongly opposing it. It's not ready. Solar in Minnesota is still in the early stages of development. Emotional here. The Metro has 1% of solar homes or homes with solar. Rural Minnesota is less than 1%. And in some cases, in a lot of these co-ops, less than 0.5%. If this bill passes as it is, it will crush our industry, again, at the beginning stages of solar. I'm worried about my employees. I'm worried about our current customers, future customers, and also the other developers sitting in this room with me. When California eliminated net metering in 2023, they lost over 17,000 jobs in a 6-month period, and they were at 36% penetration. Again, we're at 1% penetration and less in most cases, especially rural Minnesota. If I thought this bill was fair, I'm a fair person, and if I thought it was justified, I would not be sitting here today trying to defend my small business and my competitors' small businesses. Now let's talk about how this bill reads. The co-ops will pay an avoided cost rate for excess. I know what those avoided cost rates look like because MRES utilities are already using them. Wilmer, 0.0255 cents per kilowatt hour. Alexandria, 0.021. Marshall, Minnesota, 0.04. Yet the senator said we can't have numbers because we don't know. Well, there's 3 examples that we can look at what avoided costs looks like. It's less than wholesale rates. Candy Oi Co-op. I'm from New London, Minnesota. Candy Oi Co-op is in my territory. Their fees, just base fees, $49. Their grid access fees, which grid access fees were implemented in 2016, so co-ops and municipalities could recoup some of their costs. A solar owner, a solar member of that co-op has to pay up to $71 in fees. Those fees are monthly. They're not annual, they're monthly every month. If this bill goes into effect how it reads, and they're only gonna get access for the, at avoided cost rate, you would have to take a 10 kW system and put a 30 kW system on that house to eliminate their electric bill, as what Senator said that our solar owners are trying to do.
Ms. Benjamin, we're at about 3 minutes. If you could wrap it up, please.
Yeah, sorry. So again, if this bill goes through as it's wrote, it will crush solar in Minnesota, and all the gains that we've had in our state, up to 1%, will be totally lost. And that concerns me, and it should concern all of you if you want to see that type of development and hit our clean energy goals here in Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Benjamin. Next, we have Michael Allen. The next listed testifier is Mr. Knipe, who I think is online and going to go to the end of the list. So following Mr. Allen's testimony, we'll then go to Bob Blake. Mr. Allen, welcome back to the committee. Nice to see you. Please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Frentz and committee members. Good afternoon. I'm Michael Allen. I'm the CEO of All Energy Solar, a local solar company with over 250 employees and 15 years of loyal business to our great state of Minnesota. We have worked with over 11,000 customers, 1,000 of which are members of the Minnesota Co-op and municipality, and I'll now refer to all of them as utilities. I'm also a co-op member owner of Todd Wadena Electric. I feel uniquely qualified to speak about the proposed changes to our net metering laws. I oppose the changes that have been drafted. I primarily oppose this. My primary opposition is due to the unbelievable lack of information and data justifying such a sweeping change to a 40-year-old law. As a business owner, I rely on data to make decisions, and as a lawmaker, I would hope that you do too. I was asked to testify at this hearing 3 days ago, and in that time, I have collected my own data. The current law allows utilities to charge solar fees. The proposed changes to the law would not result in these solar fees being removed. The data I collected is based on solar customers who are interconnected to specific utilities that charge a solar fee. Number one, we have 1,079 customers across 84 utilities, and nearly half of those connected to utilities who charge a solar fee. Number two, our customers that are member owners and paying solar fees pay the utility approximately $7,900 per month. That adds up to about $95,000 a year. Number three, if all of these customers generated 10% more energy than what they needed, it would result in these same utilities needing to purchase about $70,000 in excess energy generation. Number four, this doesn't add up. Our customers are paying more in fees than what the utility pays in excess energy, and now they want us to pay even less. In conclusion, I appreciated this committee's open and honest debates. However, without actual data or studies, we're relying on anecdotes. The data we have seen suggests utilities are actually profiting off solar customers by charging fees that outweigh their costs for accessing the grid they already own. For a fair outcome for Minnesotans, we must base decisions on research, data, and facts. We are ready to share our data with lawmakers at any moment. Thank you for your time and consideration. I strongly urge you to vote against Senate File 1142.
Thank you very much, Mr. Allen. Our next testifier is Bob Blake, and the next testifier after that would be Griffin Dooling. Mr. Blake, welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And committee, my name is Bob Blake. I am the owner of Solar Bear. I'm also a tribal citizen of the Red Lake Nation. In tribal communities, we have co-ops, essentially. And you know, we've been working very hard over the last, I would say, 5-6 years, especially in the last couple of years, around the Solar for All EPA bill, which is about $7 billion, about $60 million coming to the state of Minnesota, but another like $70+ million going to Midwest Tribal Energy Resource Association. We've got agreements with both the state and with Mterra to basically build solar on our community members' homes. We've got training programs, workforce development programs. We've been investing in heavily. And as a matter of fact, in the Red Lake Nation, we purchased a solar training lab that we're gonna be able to share with the other tribes up there, that we're gonna be able to basically build the skills of our tribal members. Now, the point being to all this is that we've invested very heavily into this, and then if this bill goes through, it's going to inadvertently affect what we're trying to do in our communities. We know that a lot of the problems that are disproportionately affecting our community, social ills, so to speak, you know, are directly related to poverty. Energy poverty is a huge thing in our communities. And what we would like to do is we would like to be able to build up the skill sets through workforce development, through economic development, using these distributed energy resources. And so if this thing happens, it's going to inadvertently affect what we're trying to do. So in short, everyone, I'd just like to say, if you could see it, that you not vote for this bill. And miigwech, everyone, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. It is very much the interest of this committee to develop renewable energy, including the jobs. We're at about 63,000. The question before the committee includes the question not of net metering and rooftop so much as if there's excess generation, what is the cost that's borne in relation to the non-building net ratepayers. So thank you, Mr. Blake. To be continued. Now we have testimony from Griffin Dooling. Nice to see you again, Mr. Dooling. After that, it would be Logan O'Grady. Mr. Dooling, please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, Senator Rarick, thank you for having us here today. This is a very important conversation. My name's Griffin Dooling. I'm the CEO of Blue Horizon Energy. I also serve as the board chair of the Minnesota Solar Energy Industries Association. We're very concerned about this bill and frankly, as you've heard, oppose it very strongly. I think there's three kind of core planks to that concern. One is the idea that this is a retroactive change to a 40-year-old statute. I think as we've heard today, even from the cooperatives and others that have supported this bill, this problem, if you want to call it that, remains a vanishingly small problem. Over in the other body in the House, one cooperative testified that 0.1% of their members had potentially, questionable projects under this statute. So this is far from a runaway freight train, and we should be treating it with the discipline that it requires to address. The capacity definition is also a very substantial concern. This would take us out of alignment with existing engineering practice, out of alignment with MISO, out of alignment with hundreds and hundreds of pages and decades of engineering documentation. And frankly, as Alex testified earlier, would just make a lot of projects impractical, which is obviously not the direction I think the state wants to go. The other piece here that is a substantial concern is the idea that utilities would compensate for anything at avoided cost. Avoided cost is defined in statute, it is defined in policy, and as Kim shared, it is approximately 2 cents across a wide variety of utilities. Many of these same utilities have testified in this body and in other bodies that they are procuring utility scale solar at approximately 6 cents per kilowatt hour. So why would they procure utility scale solar, which we've heard is the most cost efficient form of solar, at 6 cents, and then try to steal from their members at 2 cents? At best, there should be parity between these energy sources, and I think that's a substantial problem with the current draft of the bill. If we're going to open up the net metering statute, I think we should look at a few other areas that, frankly, are challenging. First is that there's no transparency or consistency on the calculation of these solar fees. They range from $10 a month to hundreds of dollars a month, and frankly, this causes a substantial issue when you try to adopt solar in these communities because you never know what you're going to get, and many of these fees are not made public. When we look at this statute and this proposed change to this statute, I think one of the biggest challenges is that it's simply not in alignment with the way that Minnesotan businesses and consumers consume power. I'd like to leave you with just one small example of this. We have a customer up in northern Minnesota, in Ada, Minnesota, Jacobson Farm. They have 15 meters across this diversified farming operation. It's a 4th generation family farm, really wonderful people. They have 2 solar arrays. So on that farm, those solar arrays produce roughly the amount of kilowatt hours that they consume across the whole footprint. So when you look at those 2 meters, you'd probably say, hey, they're producing more than they can consume on these 2 meters. But that's then consumed 30, 40, 50 feet away on the rest of the farming site on all the other meters that are there. And I think that's a very, very common situation. One final point on fees for this example. This farm pays over $10,000 a year in fees. $10,000 a year in fees. So this solar array will produce probably about $20,000 a year in value in terms of energy production. Half of that goes to fees. These folks are already paying substantial fees. Every time they upgrade a meter, it's $25,000. This spring, they're adding 2 meters to power 2 tile pumps. It's going to be $50,000. When you look back over the recent years, they've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in the cooperative infrastructure. So this concept that folks that install a large solar array are not paying their fair share doesn't match with the reality of the way energy is being consumed in these communities. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to address questions later in the session and appreciate your opposition to this bill, folks.
Mr. Dooling, first of all, I want to thank you for your engagement in your role for MNC. I think you're one of the voices that'll have to be heard from as we go forward with the bill. Just want to make sure I understood your testimony. This bill seems to me to be asking not, do we want people to generate solar power to power their property? We do, and it's been a big success, and your members deserve credit for that. I think this bill is more about when they produce more than is necessary for that property. Is it appropriate the way we pay now, and how does that affect other ratepayers? You don't have to agree with my take, but you did use the term vanishingly small and 0.1%. Is it your testimony to the Senate Energy Committee that in your view, give or take, that's the percentage of overusers or profiteers or whatever compared to all the rooftop and distributed generation solar in Minnesota?
So that specific example was based on, I believe, East Central Energy, a cooperative that testified in the House, just taking the data that they vocalized during that hearing. I would say, though, that directionally, Mr. Chair, that is probably a relatively good proxy for the true extent of that profiteering behavior that we agree is not ideal.
Mr. Dooley, I want to thank you for that, not only for the number and perspective, which we will not on this committee hold you to, but it gives us an idea for that one cooperative, and also for sort of saying this is an attempt to talk about one type of renewable energy generation and the costs, and to be continued for you and your partners at Mencia. Thank you again, Mr. Dooling. Mr. O'Grady up next, and after that, Sarah Meridian. Mr. O'Grady, please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. For the record, my name is Logan O'Grady. I am the Executive Director of the Minnesota Solar Energy Industries Association. I don't think we've appeared in front of this committee yet this session, so as a refresher, MNCIA is a 501c6 nonprofit trade association. We represent over 170 other organizations, from engineering firms, law firms. I think we have a strategic communications firm. We had a drone firm one time. But our bread and butter of membership is the solar installers and developers throughout your districts in Minnesota, helping your constituents go solar. I do want to make sure that I thank Senator Rarick for bringing this bill forward. It's a conversation starter, in my opinion, and I think that is a good conversation to have. And I do want to make sure, Mr. Chair, that people know that the door to your office was open to us last week and has always been open to us. And there is significant work happening in the House as well. We're meeting on Wednesday with the House author, Representative Baker, as well as MREA. And I do want to thank MREA as well, who will be joining MNCIA at our board meeting in a couple weeks, and for still coming to the table with us. I know our members can be passionate about their work and what they do, and I appreciate them just hearing us out. As was kind of alluded to in some other testimony, I think that we are willing to have any conversation that our industry has been impacted by or impacts others. We want to make sure that we're having that conversation around facts and data. And so all I can do is look at what's given to me, and what has been given to me is, and what we know is that all utilities in Minnesota have 3% or less solar penetration. Okay, that's one fact. We also know that utilities are allowed to charge solar owners grid access fees to utilize their system. That's one fact. Another fact, we also can look at other studies. A recent study from California shows that solar rooftop solar in the state has a net benefit to everybody. And any cost implication would not come until utilities reach at least 10%, if there is any cost implication. So those are the things that I know from what I'm looking at. What I don't know is how much are utilities charging in grid access fees? What does that look like? How much cost implications are there to other non-solar users? So if we want to have this conversation, I think that we should study the issue and look at it very closely, because I don't want us using a sledgehammer on an issue, on enabling legislation that has built an industry when it really requires a scalpel. So I know I'm over time, so I'm going to stop there. But again, I think our members are ready to have thoughtful conversations around solutions. We can look to what other states and markets have done. Some have taken much more thoughtful approaches. And, you know, Mr. Carlisle alluded to difficult conversations, and as some of my members who have appeared today have already talked about, they too have to have difficult conversations, and some of them are trying to explain why they showed up here today to talk about this bill that has major implications on their business and their employees. So sorry for going over time.
Thank you, Mr. O'Grady. Best of luck in those meetings that you're having next week. That's exactly what this committee has always promoted, is a little conversation and maybe seeing where some sweet spot is. Members, we're going to have Sarah Meridian testify next. By the way, we're going to then, after that, jump out of order and have Bobby King testify in person. So if you're following along, Ms. Meridian, Bobby King next. Ms. Meridian, welcome back to the committee. Please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Frentz and committee members. My name is Sarah Meridian, and I'm the Government Relations and Policy Director for CURE, a rurally based nonprofit organization dedicated to protecting and restoring resilient towns and landscapes by harnessing the power of the people who care about them. I appreciate the opportunity to testify about SF 1142 today. We care deeply about rural electric cooperatives at CURE and have worked side by side with them to secure historic investments from the federal government. We have a deep appreciation for our cooperatives' adherence to the 7 cooperative principles and the work they do for their member owners and for our state. Cooperatives and municipal utilities are the best places for member owners and constituents to achieve energy democracy and work together to produce and consume clean energy in the community. Minnesota's approach to net metering is not a perfect system, as we've heard, and we understand the concerns raised here today. Net metering has been debated for the last several years and has changed numerous times since 2010. This instability makes it difficult for both providers and consumers to plan for the future. Without clarity, transparency, and consistency around how to set truly fair repayment rates, the disputes about net metering will continue. CURE believes the more appropriate action at this time is to commission a study that could, among other things, identify the specific concerns raised by stakeholders, collect necessary information about those issues, and analyze potential solutions. We would be happy to work with legislators and other stakeholders to determine how that bill could be written to maximize its effectiveness. The goal of a successful net metering policy should be threefold. First, to ensure cooperative and municipal utilities are compensated fairly. Second, that member owners with net metering installations are compensated fairly. And third, that distributed generation is accelerated in its deployment. Until a more robust analysis has been completed, CURE opposes the kind of changes proposed by SF 1142. For details about our specific concerns with this bill as it is currently, please see our written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brady. Well done. Minute 44, new record. We're going to, as I said, now go to Bobby King for in-person testimony. Mr. King, that scheduled concession comes from Mr. Klein here, so you can thank him. With that, if you could please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Mr. Chair and Committee, my name is Bobby King. I'm the Minnesota State Director for Solar United Neighbors. We're a nonprofit that works throughout rural and small-town Minnesota to help folks go solar. So the people we work with are folks that have gone solar, or folks that are looking at going solar. I just wanted to talk about the mechanics of net metering, because I think when you think about how it works, you'll see that there really is very little or no cost shift. So when you're a solar owner with an over 40 kilowatt system and you produce more solar power than you need at that moment, it'll go back onto the grid. And electricity wants to get used up. It's going to go to the closest load, which is your neighbor. So it's going to flow through their electric meter, and they're going to be, because it went through their meter, their utility provider charges them retail for power that the utility, in fact, didn't provide, but that the solar owner provided. So it makes sense, and the way it works now is that solar owner then gets a credit. So in essence, there's no shift, it's a wash. It's just as if the person who received the solar used less power on that day. And then when we've heard talks about how much rural electric co-ops are paying out, but we haven't heard about income from them. So they charge somebody for power they didn't get, they didn't provide. That's some income. They charge fees, grid access fees, solar access fees, that's income. So I think what I and other groups that are opposed to this bill are looking at, let's see those numbers and understand if there is a cost shift, if there is one, and if there is one, what it is. Then the last point I just want to make, and I passed out a handout that's back here. The Minnesota PUC tracks exactly how much small-scale solar is going on in each utility district. The overwhelming majority of utilities have less than 100 solar arrays in their territory. At some point, they have to sell electricity to stay in business. So at some point, there may be a need to look at this and revise it, but it's at like the 10% penetration level, not the current level of penetration. So I'd ask you to take this all into consideration as we think about how to improve this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. King. Going back to the list as printed, we have Christy Robinson, who I think is online. Mr. Klein, is that right? Ms. Robinson, are you online?
I am.
We can hear you loud and clear. Thank you. Welcome to the committee. If you could please introduce yourself and then present your testimony.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Christy Robinson. I'm a professional engineer with over 20 years of experience working with electric cooperatives, assisting with the interconnection of consumer-owned renewable systems. Today, I'm here to provide a technical explanation of why maintaining the proposed cap at less than 40 kW allows for more consumers to successfully interconnect their solar systems. To provide some context, please keep in mind the average residential home only needs a 9 kW solar system to offset their annual energy needs. This size solar system has little technical issues in being interconnected with the existing distribution infrastructure that currently exists, and this proposed bill does not affect the interconnection nor the fiscal payback for residential members who have these system sizes. Currently in the cooperatives, there are over 1,700 solar systems that are size greater than 20 kW that still fit under the net metering situation. Only 300 of those systems, however, are classified as something else other than residential. It's also important to note that electric cooperatives mainly serve residential homes with very few large commercial or industrial loads. As such, the solar hosting capacity at most cooperative substations is very limited, often less than 2 megawatts, and in some areas that solar hosting capacity is fully utilized. When this happens, new solar systems that are being proposed for interconnection face additional technical and financial challenges. Under the proposed bill, even in areas with limited solar hosting capacity, cooperatives can still accommodate most residential members who are wanting to install solar systems to meet their average energy needs. However, problems could arise if the net metering cap is raised above 40 kW. If that happens, solar hosting capacity could be consumed more quickly by fewer larger systems, creating greater barriers for other residential members who wish to install solar. If the goal is solar for all, the future distribution grid is better suited to many small solar systems rather than large systems above the current net metering cap. The current 40 kW cap strikes a good balance, ensuring that all residential and small commercial members can interconnect solar systems if they choose. With that, later on, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions the chair of the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Your testimony essentially in favor of the current cap at 40. Am I hearing that correctly?
That is correct.
All right, thank you for that testimony. Our next testifier is Carmen Fernholz. The testifier after that would be Robbie Tichy. Ms. Fernholz, are you online?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Sir, nice to see you.
Yeah,
Welcome
sure.
to the committee. Please identify yourself and present your testimony.
Yeah, Carmen Fernholz, farmer from Madison, Minnesota. Just a couple of points. The sun sends more energy to the earth in 1 hour than all humans use in 1 year. There is so much solar energy hitting the earth's surface that even a single year of sunshine exceeds all known energy reserves of oil, coal, natural gas, and uranium put together. So as a farmer, a work in progress for me has always been to increase profitability and sustainability on the farm, as well as for my community. One of the best, most recent decisions I have made was to invest significantly in my own on-farm solar array. This investment has allowed me to reduce and stabilize my energy costs while enhancing the sustainable environment of the farm by generating solar power. While it was a substantial upfront investment, it has already added greatly to the long-term profitability and sustainability of the farm. This bill, however, would be moving, in my estimation, the development of privately owned and invested alternative energy sources in the wrong direction by severely disincentivizing options for farmers, homeowners, and rural small businesses to be energy independent, more profitable, and more sustainable. So what is the value of solar and how do we all share in these values? We all share in reduced fuel costs. Solar, wind, and battery are technology and not fuel. We reduced fixed and variable costs of operations and maintenance, minimized and reduced electrical reserve generation capacity costs, reduced transmission capacity costs, reduced distribution capacity costs, and solar creates a more redundant distribution system. So by investing in the solar array on my farm, I am investing in the future. Additionally, by investing in solar, as I have done, Swanson's law continues to be a positive force in the ever-decreasing costs of solar and ultimately of electricity itself for everyone. So as we continue to increase our demand for electricity, there will be a growing need for more electricity on the grid. Where will this capacity come from, if not from added capacity infrastructure? Why not maintain the incentive for the private sector in the form of farm, homeowner, and private business investments to grow as a significant part of this need? So Minnesota should not step backwards, in my opinion, on longstanding effective policy that allows for more of us to be energy producers and not just energy consumers. And thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Fernholz. Next, and all our testifiers from here on out are online, is Robbie Tichy. The following testifier would be Michael Overend. Robbie Tichy, are you online?
I am. Can you hear my sound all
We
right?
can, loud and clear. Thank you. Please introduce yourself and present a couple minutes of testimony.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. My name is Robbie T.G. I'm a solar owner. I have an array at my home in rural northern Minnesota. Here are a few thoughts to add to some of the excellent testimony that I heard on the 20th of February to help you realize that SF 1142 requires a major overhaul. The 6 solar owners that I reached out to in my rural area before installing my own array to do some research all happen to be retired on a fixed income. Our systems are built here to power our homes, not to pick the pockets of our neighbors, as was insinuated by a number of times during the hearing. Most of our neighbors are family, they're close friends, caregivers, students or former students, and pet sitters. So first of all, Minnesota statute already allows co-ops to levy a charge for a grid access fee. I pay $21.80 a month for mine. It was previously $10 a month, so that's more than doubled. I pay a service availability charge, which increased from $30 to $52 per month in 2023. For these fixed fees alone, I pay $886 a year. Solar array owners also pay taxes on the solar power they put in the grid. That's in excess of that month's use at their home. So I now filled out a W-9 form because this is considered income. What you won't hear, and it was mentioned at the hearing on the 20th of February, is that in the winter or cloudy months that I did not generate enough energy to my home, I write a check to the co-op for that energy that I use from the grid. What you also won't hear is that I can choose to have credits rolled over for next month's use, but at the end of the year, if there's any excess credits that you may have left, that's kept by the co-op. I called and inquired with my rural co-op to see what they do with those extra credits, and they didn't know what they did with it. They wouldn't tell me. So please take this critical opportunity to help meet our carbon goal, support Minnesota's renewable energy, its many healthy jobs, and sustainable economic infrastructure by voting no on SF 1142. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Teachy. Next is Michael Overend. The testifier after that would be Doug Nopar. Mr. Overend, are you online?
I hope my volume's okay.
Loud and clear. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Friends, committee members, and Senator Rarick. I'm Mike Overend, a solar homeowner testifying from my energy efficiency remodeled home in Two Harbors, and I use net metering to help create a better clean energy future for our kids. The payback period for my home solar is 18 years, even after the 30% federal tax credit, and this was worsened by a new grid access fee from our cooperative. I ask you to please reconsider and oppose amending net metering, which discourages homeowners from cost-effectively investing in clean energy resources. Minnesota lost $22.7 billion in imported fossil fuel costs in 2024, about 1.5 times more than funding for our K-12 education system. We need to invest this money in Minnesota to create our clean energy economy, and this includes maintaining appropriate net metering rates. Electrifying homes and businesses, plus EVs, AI, and data centers are all rapidly increasing electricity demand, making it harder to meet Minnesota's important 100% clean electricity by 2040 goal. Minnesota utilities have concerns for growing net metering costs, but reducing net metering rates makes long home solar payback periods worse. It will discourage the important homeowner investment in solar and storage that Minnesota needs. There are creative solutions that equitably encourage more home solar and storage across Minnesota. California's experience shows that pairing solar with battery storage to create virtual power plants can uniquely address these problems by increasing reliability, reducing costs, and decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. Virtual power plants offer a new revenue source for homeowners and support Minnesota's solar, battery, and smart appliance businesses. They benefit utilities and their customers with major savings for reliable, clean energy while decreasing peak energy costs and the need for new peaker plants and transformers. Finally, a Minnesota state tax credit on new home solar and storage and on net metering revenue would also support homeowners wanting solar and batteries. Thank you for letting me provide this testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Overend. Our next testifier is Doug Nopar. If I'm pronouncing that correctly, Mr. Nopar, are you online?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Are we saying that name correctly?
You are.
If you could please then, Mr. Nopar, introduce yourself and present your testimony. We're hoping for a couple minutes. And I should note, members, it's possible Senator Rarick needs to head out to another committee here within the next half hour, just throwing that out there as we get to the Q&A. Mr. Nopar.
Thanks for the opportunity to testify. I appreciate it. I'm Doug Nopar. I'm a solar owner. I live on a small farm south of Winona in Wisquoy Township, where I raise sheep and cattle. I'm a member of My Energy Co-op, and I have been for 40 years. I first installed solar panels on our barn roof in 2005, with expansions in 2011 and 2018. My total investment is approximately $75,000. I believe in Minnesota becoming more energy independent, and I value being part of that through producing electricity here on the farm from the sun. There's nothing wrong about Minnesota being the only state in the country that pays the retail rate. Homegrown energy produced by individual farmers and landowners like me, I feel should be a priority. I do receive the retail rate on electricity I produce beyond what I use. For me, that amounts to about $1,000 per year that I'm paid for electricity that goes to my neighbors. Changing the rate from retail to wholesale really amounts to changing the rules in the middle of the game. It's a bad idea. Down here in southeast Minnesota, we've got hundreds of My Energy members who have solar systems. And I know that many like me would oppose this change. So I ask you to oppose it. Thanks for your time, and I appreciate the chance to testify.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nopar. Our next testifier is Casey Creech, and after that would be George Plum. Casey Creech, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Casey Creech, co-founder of Everlight Solar, based in Brooklyn Park and Savage. I'm here to address a critical flaw in SF 1142, the provision letting energy credits expire at year end. In Minnesota's seasonal climate, solar customers bank excess credits in fall months to offset winter bills when the sunlight fades. Expiring credits in December strips homeowners of those credits when they're needed most in January and February, making solar unaffordable. Discouraging solar through expiring credits slows our progress and contradicts Minnesota's commitment to accessible renewable energy. Families counting on these credits, especially low-income households, will suffer most. I urge this committee to amend SF 1142, eliminate the year-end credit expiration or shift it to spring, aligning it with Minnesota's seasonal reality and clean energy vision. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Creech. Our next testifier is George Plum. The testifier after that would be Aaron Paul. Mr. Plum, are you online?
Yes, I am. Can you guys hear me fine?
We can, just fine. Thank you. Please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
My name is George Plum. I'm a residential solar design engineer for Wolf River Electric, as well as an ECE customer with a small generation facility. I've been in renewable industry for a number of years now. I've held numerous positions within it. I have vast personal experience with renewables here in the Midwest, as well as in the Southwest where I started, both from a consumer and a contractor viewpoint. But I'd like to address all of you today as a consumer. I wanted to raise a critical concern here based on the proposed revisions to the energy policy, particularly sections 1, subdivision 3, subsections A and F, which threaten the viability of renewable energies and the residential small-scale facilities by undercutting even what the average wholesale rate is. As it stands now, facilities already face many hurdles. They are a financial investment in energy independence. And with these revisions, we'll now have to size systems larger to get the same benefits, which obviously is going to increase costs and deter more homeowners. Inevitably, it's just going to push us to a future where only large utility companies and upper echelons of Minnesotans can afford to switch to renewables, and in the process, unfortunately, stifle an entire industry within it. In the Southwest, where these types of things have been common and enacted, homeowners regularly end up with 2 electric bills. And the inception of these, I was personally able to see drastically slowed the market, negatively impacted state's economy, raised system size for those who could afford it, and led to many misunderstandings regarding self-generation, buybacks, and many of which are still parroted to this day. I would also like to note that Section E allows for a lot of these non-generating utility companies to recoup the funds that were paid out to the small generating facilities from the generating utility company that they're contracted with. Very few Minnesotans have the capital to invest in a system large enough to provide any sort of supplemental income. Most don't make the investment if they do. And the long and short of it is that Minnesotans aren't trying to make money en masse on this. They're trying to reduce the expenditures in this economy. As we all move towards our net zero 2040, I really feel that we should be supporting every Minnesotan who wants to be part of that transition. Fair compensation, accessible energy options, and encouragement of small-scale systems really should be a foundation of our energy policy. In fact, it would make me ask what makes power provided by small facilities less viable than power produced by larger facilities to justify the avoided cost rate. It's not just an issue of fairness. It really seems to be a direct attack on the ability of individuals, businesses, and small-scale generators to help participate in Minnesota's renewable energy future. I would also like to point out that one of the other things that had come up here regarding a number of 1,400 users, 300 of that non-residential, from that particular utility company that services 1.7 million total users would still be less than 1% of 1% for those oversized. So if that's what we're discussing again.
Mr. Plum, if we could wrap it up, please.
That's it. I would conclude at that point. I appreciate you guys' time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your testimony. Our next testifier is Aaron Paul, and the final testifier on our list will be Ronald Nypan. Aaron Paul, are you online?
I am. How's my volume?
It's just fine. Thank you for appearing. Please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
My name is Aaron Paul. I'm a resident of Shakopee, and I own rooftop solar. And I bought my solar from Wolf River. As it turns out, they were in my neighborhood a couple years ago, had a conversation, and decided to make the investment in a solar panel. And why did I make the investment? Biggest reason, I think, is to reduce my energy costs, add a value to my home. All the excess that I would generate would be put toward my winter bills. And then another very important point is my stable monthly bills. I have 3 kids in college, and as we all know, those costs can go up and down, and in the summer it gets pretty expensive. So I wanted some stability. So I invested in solar panels, and things were going really great until I got a letter from from Shakopee Public Utilities indicating they were going to begin charging a solar grid access fee. My concern is that where do these fees end? Once you begin charging something, they increase, then you start tacking on more fees. My concern is that I feel like I did the right thing by investing in solar energy. And in looking at this cost of service study that they sent me, it feels like I'm being penalized for the investment. So I think I beat that minute 45 record. Thank you for the opportunity.
Mr. Paul, first of all, yes, you are now the reigning champion at 1 minute, 30 seconds, 0.85. Thank you for that. And thank you also for your testimony. Our final listed testifier is Ronald Nypan. Mr. Nypan, are you available online?
I think so. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you, sir. Please introduce yourself and present your testimony. And don't feel constrained by this obvious competition that's erupted to see who can go the quickest.
I won't do that, I don't think. My name is Ron Nypan. I live about 20 miles northwest of Little Falls. I have a 14K solar system that I installed about 6 years ago. My system is connected to Crow Wing Power's grid. They have 40,000 customers. Mine is one of just under 200 distributed generation systems. This is 1/2 of 1% of their total customers. I'd like to know, what is the total cost increase of this tiny fraction of their consumers? Are we supposed to take their word that non-solar customers are forcing a huge burden to be borne because of 200 people that have solar? I spent 35 years in IT working for large and small companies across the country. I worked with data for decades and used it to support decisions and changes to computer systems. Where is the data to support this major change to net metering? It's time for an actual study to lay out the facts of this supposed burden, not just facts and figures from the utilities. I communicated with Eric Quayle, the CEO of Proponent Power, regarding the proposed changes. He told me, quote, "If reform of the net metering law were to take shape, I'd expect a grandfathering clause for existing DG generators. Your solar system will likely remain under the same rate mechanism in effect at the time of interconnection with Proponent Power," unquote. I'm told that Mr. Quayle no longer wants a grandfathering clause. I invested $32,000 in my system and it will be paid off finally next May. My investment's based on current net metering rules. If you reduce the payment for excess generation, it'll push my return on investment out years, if not decades. How is this fair to those who are supposed to be helping the state meet this carbon-free mandate? The power companies are realizing that they can make more money by installing their own massive solar systems, often taking up hundreds of acres of farmland across the state. Is that what we really want to promote? By putting systems on building rooftops and lawns, we distribute solar systems around the state. We should be encouraging individual systems instead of giving these monopolies more money to build their own systems that will cost everyone more. We're all seeing that green energy is expensive and it isn't always available. It's time for the state to study how individual solar systems affect the grid and decide what the best course of action is. We shouldn't just listen to the power companies and their lobbyists. I urge you to vote against this bill as it's currently written. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Naipan. Folks, that ends our listed testifiers. Are there members of the public who wanted to testify who for some reason did not let Mr. Klein know? Seeing none. Senator Rarick, what's your schedule here? We would like to go to member questions, including member questions of testifiers. You got to get going?
If I can be out of here in 15 minutes, that would allow me to get over to judiciary.
I'm happy to pledge my support for winding up member questions in 15 minutes. We have two members who'd like to ask questions, Senator Gruenhagen and Senator Weber. Allow you, Senator McEwen, do you want to be added to the list? All right, Senator McEwen. So that seems manageable. Senator Rarick, why don't we go now to member comments and questions, and we'll see how it goes. And if you have to go, it is the intention of the committee to lay the bill over. So if we lose you for the last couple of minutes, maybe we'll have your final comments before you need to take off. Is that fair, Senator? Yes, it is. All right. Senator Gruenhagen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah. So how's your self-esteem in relationship to this bill, Senator Rarick? No, just skip that. Anyway, I've been heavily criticized my life. I know how it goes, okay? Yeah, you know, I can understand the testimony and concerns about this bill because obviously they're investing thousands of dollars based on the laws that were present at the time. You know, I own my own business and I've taken advantage of certain things, like when I built my office building. And if you change it in the middle of it, I can see why the frustration is coming out with the people that have done that. To balance that, however, I do think that a couple of meetings ago, we had testimony that 36% of the people in the state of Minnesota can't pay their energy costs or are struggling to pay their energy costs, okay, 36%. I doubt if many of those people have solar, okay? So the other thing I'll just say quickly, and I got other comments, but I'll skip them. The map that was given to us from the MREA, Director of Government Affairs, showed that Minnesota is the only state that allows excess generation paid at a retail rate. So it would appear that all other states have addressed this and have tried to bring the excess generation to be paid at a much more reasonable rate than the going retail rate. So my question is, after hearing the concerns, and I think it's a teeter-totter effect. I mean, again, 36% of our Minnesotans are struggling to pay their electric bill or can't pay it. And we've also had testimony from Mr. Sullivan and Mr. Carlisle in terms of the excess cost it's costing them. But do you see, after all this testimony, a compromise that could come out of this discussion that would bring peace in the valley?
Thank you, Senator Gruenhagen. Senator Rarick, I think that question's for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Gruenhagen, I think one of the earlier testifiers had made a comment. They were a little disturbed that there wasn't more discussion on this. Maybe that person hadn't been included in it, but I have been open. I think that is exactly why the MREA came to me to carry the bill. They remembered the work that I did on ECO, how I worked with folks on every side of the issue and continued negotiations right up until the moment it finally passed. I have made that same commitment on this. Representative Baker and myself have multiple meetings established. So do I believe this is the final iteration of the bill? Probably not. But I hope people look at my past history here in this issue area and understand that I listen to everyone, I take their considerations into account, and I try to end up with a bill that is the best package for everyone in Minnesota, not one particular group.
Thanks, Senator Rarick. Senator Gruenhagen.
One quick question yet. Thank you, Senator Rarick, for that response. Do you believe that the excess generation rate that we're paying at the retailer rate is bringing in outstate people to take advantage of that by overbuilding a system in order to profit on the, are you aware of any circumstances like that?
Senator Rarick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am not aware of any of that situation that other folks are coming in to benefit off of our plan. The one thing I will say, one of the arguments we've heard about is that there would be a loss of jobs in Minnesota because of this. The question I kind of put back, because where else are they going to go? We are the state that has the highest benefits to overbuilding in the country right now. Even if we pass this, Minnesota is still, when we hear about the penetration rate of solar in Minnesota, this is still a place solar companies are going to want to be because of the fact of how small the penetration level is. I just think that this is trying to get at a fair rate for that overgeneration. So I don't believe we're going to see this huge loss of jobs if we do this. I do not believe we're going to see the solar industry fall apart in Minnesota unless it is not affordable on its own to stand up and be what people claim it is.
Thank you, Senator Gruenhagen. Thank you very much. Next, we have Senator Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'm one of only 3 senators on this committee that was here in 2013 when we were talking about net metering in the Energy Committee. And quite frankly, we were talking about the unfairness of that process at that time. What other business is forced to buy their gross product at retail rate and turn around and sell it for retail rate, number one, even if they could sell it? At that time, much of the power was having to be put back onto the grid, and you know what the REAs got for that power? Yeah, wholesale rate. So it was a losing proposition. It was the issue of fairness was brought up. It's a 40-year-old law. My question is, so what? This legislature changes laws all the time. In the last 2 years, we've changed some things mightily that have negatively impacted schools, local governments, individual private businesses. The only time fairness comes up is it depends whose ox is getting gored at the time. Senator Rarick, as I understand your bill, it only impacts oversized facilities. Is that correct?
Senator Rarick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Weber, that is correct. When I was hearing testifiers talk about that they will now have to oversize in order to, the only reason they would have to oversize is if, in fact, the goal was to generate revenue, they would have to oversize that portion that's above and beyond their usage to realize the same amount of revenue. But if they are looking to install a system that will help reduce or eliminate their bill, this bill has zero impact. They will still put their excess out onto the system when they're producing, be able to use back when they need, and if those two balance out, net effect is a zero bill.
Thank you, Senator Rarick. Senator Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, my question for the solar developers then at this point is, how many of your systems are currently oversized?
Senator Weber, you want us to bring someone back up? There was
I don't know who can answer that, but
Mr. Dooling is coming back up. Thank you, Mr. Dooling. Also, I did mention his testimony about 1/10%. But Mr. Dooling, do you want the question from Senator Weber again, or do you think you got it?
Thank you, sir. No, I've got it, Mr. Chair. So the question was, how many are oversized today? Our position and kind of looking at, the data that we have access to is that it's a very, very small percentage of projects today. However, one concern is I think that the text as it's currently drafted does not accommodate situations where you have small businesses and family farms that may have multiple meters with widely diverse sort of energy consumption. So you have a solar array connected to one specific meter, but then you have other meters and you're using power on other parts of the farm or in the business. And so this bill would penalize those types of applications where somebody is not truly profiteering, I think we can agree, but is otherwise going to be hurt. Also, Christy from Star, who I think is a phenomenal engineer, testified that there are 1,700 projects that are larger than 20 kilowatts in cooperative territory to be affected by this bill. Of those, she said 300 of them are non-residential, so I think the assumption is if you're non-residential, you're probably a business, you're probably appropriately sized to be that large. So you have roughly 1,400 projects, potentially the wrong size. Now, we don't know if they are the wrong size or not because we don't have data on that, but just based on that one data point shared a few moments ago, that's 1,400 projects among 1.7 million cooperative members, which is far less than 1/10%.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Weber.
Maybe the appropriate question is, how many operators of these small-scale systems are receiving money from the REAs for the energy they're putting into their system?
I agree, that's a wonderful question, and Mr. Chair, we've asked for that data. We have not received it over a number of years now. We would love to see that data because I think that gets right at the core of this problem. One thing I will say, though, is that at the end of the day, I think as one of the testifiers had shared, today, if you are paid for excess power and you generate a profit to that effect, right, you are ultimately taxed on that. It's not sort of this freebie that you get, right? So I do think that there are elements in place today that from a market standpoint make it unattractive to just try to wildly overbuild, sell a bunch of power to your neighbors and do this sort of terror situation as has been described.
Thanks, Mr. Dooley. Back to Senator Weber.
Thank you. One last point. I'm glad you brought up the issue of taxes. As it relates to our REAs, the Department of Revenue, on their own, without legislative action, decided to change how they are charged for attachments and appurtenances. After 80 years, they decided they were smarter than people were 80 years ago. So 40 years, that's nothing compared to what this state does. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Weber. And point of chair privileges, I join your position on the additions and appurtenances tax issue with revenue. We worked on that for years, but that is a different hearing in a different committee. Thank you, Senator Weber. We're going to go to Senator McEwen, then Senator Matthews. Senator McEwen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I like the framing, Mr. Chair, that you brought us back to a couple of times, that this is, the issue is the rate that is currently being paid now appropriate, especially when there's an overage. And I like that because it frames it in what I'm seeing from all of the testimony that we heard today, that we have a question here. My issue is sort of that I think that this bill proposes a solution to a problem that I'm not sure there's a lot of agreement on a lot of things. And that makes me really nervous. I know that you do a lot of wonderful bipartisan work and you work really well with stakeholders, and I just want to commend you for that, and I really appreciate that. But we have a lot of opposition to this proposal still. I know just even a minute ago when you were talking about the oversizing issue, we had a bunch of experts behind you kind of shaking their heads in frustration because they wanted to offer a little bit more rebuttal to that, what you had asserted. So I do find it very compelling that this is an issue that needs to be looked at, and maybe there are some changes in the rates that could be appropriate. But it seems like there is this lack of information that we have about what making this drastic of a change would actually, the sort of secondary effects and ramifications of making this change would be. I'm also a little just worried about the posture of the bill coming before the committee with no amendment issued on the grandfathering. You know, I'm just sort of wondering what the intent is to just sort of like push this through when there are all of these questions. So I would be much more comfortable with a study to get some of the answers that we're looking at so we can all be on the same page with this. I think it's just not ready to move forward with so much opposition by really key stakeholders in this. So I can't support the bill as it is right now, but I appreciate the work on it, and I look forward to ongoing conversation, and I know it's going to be laid over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator McEwen. And we noted that in the other body, an amendment was put on regarding grandfathering, so happy to assure you that's still a topic of conversation. With that, we're going to go to Senator Matthews. And Senator Rarick, we're at this point, you're just going to have to flag us if you got to take off. Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to have a quick follow-up to our testifier who came up from solar. What harms are you claiming happens to someone who has a system under the 40 sized? There's the argument here made that it's if you're not selling back and making to the grid, that's not in effect, and a bunch of heads started shaking in the back. So what harms are you claiming are happening if you're a smaller developer and you're not doing a net sales out back to the grid?
Great question, Mr. Dooling. When you say that's the question you want directed to Mr. Dooling?
Yes, please.
All right, thank you, Senator.
If you can.
Thank you, Senator Matthews.
Since you were the
Mr.
brave
Dooling.
volunteer that came back up to the table here.
And the President.
Thank you, Chair Friends, Senator Matthews. So I think that the concern is really around this idea that, you know, today the net metering law is extremely simple, right? And there's some beauty in that simplicity. It's got a wide variety of applications that work pretty smoothly because it is such a simple statute. This change gets at a fundamental component of it and really changes it in a profound way. We understand, and frankly, I think as an industry, agree with this concept that, you know, profiteering by building a system far in excess of your needs is not the intended sort of state of the law and is not the right behavior to happen. However, there are a lot of folks like the family farm example that I gave and small businesses and others where they may have a solar array that appears larger than they need because it's interconnected to one of several meters, when in reality they are consuming all of that power and then some, and paying fees and paying infrastructure costs and these other elements to contribute back to the utility, where the amendment or sort of the modifications as proposed don't take into account that sort of complexity. And I think as we move from a net metering law that is fundamentally simple to one that starts to bring in this complexity to address these different use cases, that's where we need to do the time to put in really a program that modifies the law in a way that doesn't have unintended negative effects.
Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to chew on that for a while, but it sounds to me like many of the arguments against the bill is because it's such a small subset of the overall solar population that it should be no big deal. But that example even then seems to be a small subset of that number as a reason for not wanting to make any change to the overall deal. So I want to encourage you to work with, the beauty and the simplicity is, to use your phrase, is that the simplicity is we get paid at a higher retail rate than the wholesale rate is that the electrons would be purchased elsewhere. very simple, but it still seems like it's an inequitable system at hand, which is the goal of why we're re-examining this. So keep working with Senator Rarick on that. Mr. Chair, I would ask if MMUA is still in the room and could come back up.
Thanks, Senator Matthews. I see Mr. Black coming back up. Mr. Black, thank you. Senator Matthews.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Black, you indicated in your testimony that you looked at different options of trying to address this. You thought that this was the best option. You said that there were other less desirable alternatives. I forget the exact words you used in your testimony. Like, what other potential options were being considered in trying to address this cost problem from the utility side of things?
Mr. Black.
Mr. Chair, Senator Matthews, thank you for that question. There are different ways legislatively and administratively to recover the extra costs that are there. I mean, they clearly are there. There are grid access charges. Only about 10% of municipals charge a grid access charge right now. That's going to grow. I mean, it's just going to have to recover costs, and they're very unpopular. Otherwise, we continue to recover through raising energy rates on other customers, or raising the customer charge. That's a fixed cost that each of us pays our utility just to cover the fixed costs of running the system. But that's not desirable either, because then people can't control their own energy costs as well by using less. There are cumulative system size limits where the governing body could determine that this is getting to be too much. We need to cap how many interconnections we allow in our system. That would be unfair to those who want to just self-generate, because they can't, because the system is getting overfilled with folks who are over-generating. There are size to load limits, like California does to its investor-owned utilities. 100%, you can, your size is at 100% and no more. And that's just for the investor-owned utilities. They're already doing that in California. So those would be the other kind of tools. They all have downsides. This we thought would be much fairer, more surgical, uniform, and so that's why.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Senator Matthews.
I'll make a final comment. I appreciate that insight, Mr. Chair. So in taking all this in, the comments seem to be made or alluded to several times that that yes, we're getting paid a higher cost, but it made me feel like, are we anticipating that just this money, this payment for higher costs is just coming from somewhere? I mean, isn't it the load that's then basically on all the other ratepayers in the system, that it's rising the costs on all of them? Or, I know that the solar developers aren't going around and getting permission from all the neighbors to get this extra setup put in that they're able to then sell back to the rest of the utility at the retail rate. So I do appreciate, Mr. Chair, that you've brought this to the committee. I think this is something that we need to tackle, because we have heard about these differing prices that are being paid, and I think that they do need to get addressed, and I'm confident that the author is going to keep working with folks to see what we can get for the best product at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Matthews. Senator Hoffman.
Mr. Chair, thank you. 12 years ago, there was 3 of us on this committee that were part of the value of solar discussion and the solar standards. That would have been the good senator from Laverne and the good senator from Minneapolis on the other side there. And that conversation, it's kind of, and I'm glad of all the people, like, for example, back then when people were talking about, SIP, that's going to be whoo, right? And then SIP became a pretty good product for Minnesota. Then there was the conversation of evolving SIP. Well, then the ECO became the conversation. Oh my God, the world's going to end on ECO, right? But you had Senator Rarick was actually part of that conversation. And I say, look at this, when we say net metering. It was designed to promote, you know, this emerging industry back then, right? And we were all part of that conversation. Today, it's widely adopted, and yet, you know, our policy should reflect modern realities. And so this conversation is absolutely part of that modern reality, and you're having it. And I think I'm glad we're having this, because at the end of the day, it's like the good senator from Duluth. It's a fiscal conversation. Absolutely, it's a fiscal conversation, because sometimes when the co-ops, and you're looking at that, where is the conversation on paying that retail rate for the clean energy? You know, what about the market rate conversation? What about the cost for all member services, right? It's like, how are we spreading that piece across? It's great to have that conversation. I'm glad we're having that conversation. And I think if anybody's going to have an answer to the question, especially when you're talking about avoided cost calculation, I think Senator Rarick is the right one. And I'm glad you and Senator Rarick, I'm glad we're having this conversation. So with that, Mr. Chair, I look forward to you laying this bill over and the conversations that are going to continue until you decide to either mark this up or not mark it up. And so with that, thank you.
Thank you for that, Senator Hoffman. It is a good conversation, and as an author on the bill, you'll be a part of it and looking forward to it. Our final member who wishes to ask questions, Senator Scott Dibble of Minneapolis. Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the interest of time, and actually, well, there's some fine learned gentlemen at the table there, but our chief author is not there. I'll just flag some things I'll be looking for and listening for as this bill continues to be worked on. We haven't spent a lot of time talking about and really understanding, you know, the interconnect, the standing access charge. Sounded like folks are paying quite a bit for that, and sounds like that's also being kind of increased without forewarning, kind of throwing off their pro formas somewhat. So I'd be really interested in understanding the real numbers there. What are people really paying? Also, I heard a lot of discussion about the fact that we're talking about a de minimis number of actual customers. What is really the extent of the problem here? Are we really throwing these utilities, these co-ops and munis out of whack or not? I get that we're talking about a fairness issue and a principle, and totally open and available to that conversation to the extent that folks are, you know, making money in excess of what they need. And if that amount is too much, then I want to understand that. I heard you say that there was an amendment for grandfathering purposes, so that folks who are already have systems that their financing has been predicated on will be swept in, which I'm glad to hear that. Would love to see that happen here. I want to understand, you know, are we going to lose jobs akin to what California did if we go too fast, too far? Are we going to make achieving our 2040 goals for co-ops and munis more difficult or easier? Maybe. Who knows? Maybe we're onto something here. And avoided cost. I mean, you know, is that just going too low? Is there something in between? You know, that figure and retail versus wholesale. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Dibble, and thank you, members. Senator Rarick cannot be here for his closing remarks, but they would go something like this. I'm Senator Rarick. I'm interested in promoting renewable energy at the lowest cost to Minnesotans, and the element of fairness in the overbuilding is the primary driver for the bill. He would also say, Chair Friends talked to me about the grandfathering clause and acknowledged that it had been adopted as a Republican amendment in the House. And he did not want to offer it today, but I assure everyone in the room that is an ongoing part of the conversation that Senator Rarick is open to. For my own 2 cents, folks, this is a very important topic going to the heart of those of us who say we have to go to more carbon-free emission energy generation and take the benefits of distributed generation at the lowest cost and with equity to all the categories of ratepayers. With that, Senate File 1142 is laid over and we are adjourned. Thank you.